I stood at my mother's funeral, my heart already shattered into a million pieces, when my brother leaned in close. His breath was hot against my ear as he whispered words that cut deeper than any knife could. "You have no right to be here." The shock froze me in place. Around us, people dabbed at their eyes with tissues, completely unaware of what had just happened. My hands trembled as I gripped the program for the service. I couldn't believe he had actually said that to me. Not here. Not now. Not at Mom's funeral. But within minutes, everything would change. A truth would come to light that would make him regret those words for the rest of his life. What happened next wasn't just unexpected. It was the kind of moment that shifts everything you thought you knew about your family, about loyalty, and about the secrets people keep, even from the ones they love most. The funeral home smelled like lilies and old carpet. The air conditioning hummed quietly in the background, mixing with the soft sounds of people crying and whispering. Mom's casket sat at the front of the room, surrounded by flowers in every color you could imagine. She would have loved them. She always said flowers made every sad day a little bit brighter. I had chosen some of those arrangements myself, though my brother didn't know that. He didn't know a lot of things, as it would turn out. I had arrived early that morning, before most people showed up. I needed time alone with her, time to say the things I never got to say while she could still hear me. I sat in the front row, staring at her peaceful face through the half-open casket, and I talked to her like she was still listening. I told her I was sorry for all the times I couldn't be there physically, even though I was always there in every way that mattered. I told her I hoped she knew how much I loved her, how much I had sacrificed to make sure she was taken care of during those final years. When my brother arrived, he barely looked at me. His wife was on his arm wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my rent. They walked past me like I was a stranger. He went straight to the casket, made a big show of his grief, and then positioned himself at the front of the room like he was the only child Mom ever had. Other family members started arriving, aunts and uncles I hadn't seen in years, cousins who lived across the country, friends from Mom's book club and her church. They all came to pay their respects. Some of them hugged me. Some of them seemed confused about whether they should acknowledge me at all. I could see the questions in their eyes. They had heard things. My brother had made sure of that. For the past 2 years, he had been carefully crafting a story about me, painting me as the absent child, the one who abandoned Mom when she needed family most. He told people I was too busy with my own life to care about her. He said, I never called, never visited, never helped. And because he was there, physically present in the same town where Mom lived, people believed him. The truth was so much more complicated than that. But truth has a funny way of staying hidden when someone is determined to bury it. My brother's name is Marcus. Growing up, we were close. Not best friends exactly, but we had that bond that siblings often have. We fought over toys and TV channels. We teamed up against our parents when we wanted to stay up late or get a new video game. We protected each other at school. When our father left, when I was 12 and Marcus was 14, we became even closer for a while. We both understood the pain Mom was going through. We both tried to step up and be there for her in whatever ways kids that age can manage. But something changed as we got older. Marcus stayed in our hometown after high school. He got a job at a local factory, married his high school sweetheart, and settled into a comfortable, predictable life. I left. I went to college 3 states away, chasing dreams that felt impossible to achieve in our small town. Mom supported my decision completely. She always told me to reach for the stars, to never let anyone make me feel small. Marcus saw it differently. To him, I was abandoning the family. I was choosing my own ambitions over my responsibility to stay close to home. The rift between us grew slowly over the years. It wasn't one big fight. It was 1,000 small moments of disconnect. Phone calls that went unreturned, holidays where tensions simmered just below the surface, passive-aggressive comments about how nice it must be to live so far away. Free from family obligations, I tried to bridge the gap many times, but Marcus seemed determined to hold on to his resentment. When Mom got sick 5 years ago, everything got worse. She was diagnosed with a progressive heart condition that required constant monitoring, medication adjustments, and eventually more intensive care. I was living across the country at that point, working a demanding job that barely paid enough to cover my student loans and basic living expenses. I couldn't just pack up and move back home, but I also couldn't abandon Mom. Marcus immediately positioned himself as the devoted son. He started taking Mom to her doctor appointments. He checked in on her daily. He made sure everyone in the family knew exactly how much he was doing, and he made sure everyone knew how little I was doing. What he didn't tell anyone was that I was sending money home every single month. Significant money. Money I could barely afford to send. Money that paid for the medications insurance didn't cover. Money that paid for the home health aide who came 3 times a week. Money that paid for the special equipment Mom needed when she got weaker. I sent that money directly to an account Mom had set up specifically for her medical expenses. I did it that way because Mom asked me to. She didn't want Marcus to know. She never told me why exactly, but I could guess. She knew Marcus would see it as charity, as me trying to buy my way out of real responsibility. Or worse, he might try to control how that money was spent. So, we kept it between us. Just me and Mom. Our secret. I also called Mom every single day for 5 years. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. I called early in the morning before work or late at night after my shift ended. I listened to her talk about her doctors, her fears, her memories. I made her laugh when she was feeling down. I researched her condition obsessively, learning everything I could about treatment options and specialists. I found the cardiologist who eventually gave her 2 extra years of relatively good quality life. I coordinated with her care team, asked the questions Marcus never thought to ask, pushed back when I thought something wasn't right. But I wasn't there physically. And in Marcus's mind, that was all that mattered. Physical presence was the only currency of love and duty that he recognized. Everything else was worthless. About 6 months before Mom died, her condition deteriorated rapidly. She needed more help than a part-time aide could provide. The options were a nursing home or round-the-clock care at her house. Nursing homes in our area were depressing at best and dangerous at worst. I knew Mom would hate being in one. So I made a decision. I took out a personal loan, a big one, big enough to pay for full-time professional care at home for Mom. It meant I would be in debt for years. It meant I had to pick up extra work on weekends. It meant my own life got put on hold, even more than it already was. But it was worth it to know Mom could stay in her own home, surrounded by her own things, comfortable and cared for. Again, I set this up directly through an agency, with payments coming from an account Marcus had no access to. Mom was so grateful. She cried when I told her I had arranged everything. She said I was her angel. She said she didn't know what she would do without me. Those words kept me going through the exhaustion and the financial stress. Marcus knew Mom had home care. He thought her insurance had somehow started covering it, or that Mom was using her savings. He never questioned it too deeply because it made his life easier. He could still visit regularly and look like the devoted son. But he didn't have to actually do the hard work of caregiving. The trained nurses handled all of that. In the last month of Mom's life, I did something I had been avoiding for years. I quit my job, I drained what little savings I had left, and I came home. I didn't tell Marcus I was coming. I didn't make any announcements. I just showed up at Mom's house one afternoon and told her I was staying until the end, however long that took. She grabbed my hand with what little strength she had left and smiled. She told me she had been hoping I would come. She said there were things she needed to tell me, things she needed to make sure I understood. Those last weeks with Mom were the hardest and most precious of my life. I slept on the couch in her living room. I was there when she woke up scared in the middle of the night. I read to her when she couldn't sleep. I held her hand through the pain. I advocated fiercely with her medical team about her comfort care. The professional nurses were still there during the day, but I took over most evenings and nights. I wanted that time with her. I needed it. Marcus came by every few days during this period. He never stayed long. Seeing Mom so weak and frail seemed to upset him too much. He would sit awkwardly in the chair across from her bed, make small talk about the weather or what was happening in town, and then leave after 20 minutes. He barely acknowledged my presence. When he did speak to me, it was with cold politeness, like I was one of the hired nurses. During one of my late-night talks with Mom, when she was having a good evening and feeling alert, she brought up Marcus. "He doesn't understand," she said softly. "He thinks love looks like showing up and being seen. He doesn't understand all the other ways you've shown up for me." I told her it was okay, that I didn't need Marcus to understand. But she shook her head. "It's not okay. I've let this go on too long. I've let him believe things that aren't true because I didn't want conflict. But that was wrong of me. The truth matters." She told me that she had made arrangements. She had updated her will 6 months ago with the help of a lawyer I had helped her find. She said everything was documented. Every dollar I had sent, every sacrifice I had made, every phone call, every research treatment option, every fight I had fought on her behalf behind the scenes. She had kept records of all of it, and she had made sure those records would be presented in a way that no one could dispute or ignore. I didn't fully understand what she meant at the time. I told her I didn't care about inheritance or recognition. I had done everything out of love, not for any reward. She squeezed my hand and said, "I know, sweetheart. That's exactly why this matters. Marcus needs to understand what real devotion looks like, and he needs to face the consequences of the lies he's told." Mom died on a Tuesday morning, just as the sun was coming up. I was holding her hand. The nurse on duty was checking her vitals. Mom took 3 slow breaths, then simply stopped. It was peaceful, quiet. I sat there for a long time afterward, still holding her hand as it grew cold, not ready to let go. When I finally called Marcus to tell him, his first words were not about Mom. They were, "Why are you at her house?" I told him I had been staying with her. There was a long silence. Then he said, "We'll talk about this later," and hung up. The days between Mom's death and the funeral were a blur. Marcus took charge of all the arrangements. He didn't consult me on anything. Not the funeral home, not the service details, not the flowers. I let him do it. I was too tired and grief-stricken to fight. I focused on packing up some of Mom's personal items that I wanted to keep. Her favorite books, photos from my childhood, the quilt she had been working on. I did notice Marcus spending a lot of time in Mom's home office, going through her papers. He seemed to be looking for something. Several times I walked past and saw him with file folders spread across the desk, his expression frustrated. Once, he snapped at me to leave him alone when I asked if he needed help finding anything. His wife told me later that week, in a moment of unusual candor, that Marcus was just trying to sort out Mom's affairs, but that some things weren't adding up the way he expected. I didn't push for more information. The night before the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's words, about the arrangements she said she had made, about truth and consequences. Part of me worried about what might happen. Part of me felt a grim sense of anticipation. Mostly I just felt sad. Sad that my brother and I had come to this. Sad that even in death, Mom felt she had to set up some dramatic revelation instead of us all just being honest with each other while she was alive. So there I was at the funeral, standing in that cold room that smelled like flowers and grief, when Marcus leaned over and whispered those cruel words, "You have no right to be here." The shock of it hit me like ice water. People were still finding their seats. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and my brother was trying to throw me out of our mother's funeral. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I possibly say? We were in public, surrounded by mourners. Making a scene would dishonor Mom's memory. So I just stood there, frozen, my face burning with humiliation and anger. Marcus pulled back and looked at me with such contempt, like I was dirt on his shoe. His wife touched his arm, whispered something, and he turned away from me dismissively. He clearly expected me to leave, to slink away in shame, proving his narrative that I didn't really care, that I was never really part of this family in any meaningful way. But before I could move, before I could even process what to do next, the funeral director stepped up to the podium. Before we continue, hit like, make sure to subscribe, and comment what you think is about to happen. He was an older man with a kind face and a professional demeanor. He welcomed everyone and invited them to take their seats. The service was beginning. I sat down, my legs shaking. Marcus shot me an angry look, but couldn't do anything about it now without making a scene himself. The service started normally enough. There was a prayer from Mom's pastor, a hymn that Mom had loved. Then, the funeral director spoke again. Before we hear from family members, he said, "There is a special message that the deceased specifically requested be shared at this gathering. She recorded this video 2 months before her passing, with explicit instructions about when and how it should be shown." A confused murmur went through the crowd. Marcus's head snapped up, his expression suddenly alert and worried. I felt my heart start to pound. This was it. This was what Mom had been talking about. The funeral director stepped aside, and a screen lowered from the ceiling. The lights dimmed slightly. And then, Mom's face appeared on the screen, so alive and real that for a moment, I forgot she was gone. She was sitting in her living room, the same room where she had died, but this recording was from a time when she was healthier. Her eyes were bright, her voice was steady. "Hello, everyone," Mom began. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone. I hope my funeral has been nice so far. I hope there are lots of flowers." A few people in the crowd laughed softly through their tears. That was so like Mom, worrying about others, even in a message from beyond the grave. "I know this is unusual," she continued, "but I need to set some things straight before I'm laid to rest. There are truths that need to be told, things that have been hidden for too long because I was too weak to face the conflict. But death has a way of making you brave about the things you avoided in life." I could feel every eye in the room on the screen. The silence was absolute. Mom took a breath and continued. "I have 2 children, Marcus and my youngest. I loved them both with everything in me, but in my final years, I was not cared for equally by both. In fact, the child who sacrificed the most, who gave the most, who was truly there for me in every way that mattered, is the same child who has been unfairly judged and excluded by other members of this family." Marcus had gone completely pale. His hands gripped the edge of the pew in front of him. His wife looked confused, glancing between Marcus and the screen. Mom's video continued. "Marcus has told people that my youngest abandoned me, that they never called, never cared, never helped. These are lies. Whether Marcus believed them himself or spread them intentionally, I don't know. But they are lies, and I will not let them stand unchallenged any longer." The room erupted in whispers. People were looking at Marcus now, then at me, trying to piece together what was happening. "Let me tell you what really happened during my illness," Mom said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, Marcus visited me regularly. Yes, he drove me to appointments and checked in on me. I'm grateful for that, but what Marcus doesn't know is that for 5 years, my youngest sent money every single month to help cover my medical expenses. Expensive medications, home health aides, special equipment. These things were not covered by my insurance or my savings. Without that financial help, I would have suffered greatly or been forced into a substandard nursing facility." I heard someone gasp behind me. Marcus turned to look at me, his expression a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite read. Anger? Disbelief? Mom wasn't done. The amount of money my youngest sent over those 5 years totaled over $150,000, money they didn't have, money they borrowed and will be paying back for years to come. They did this without asking for recognition or gratitude. They did it because they loved me. $150,000. Hearing Mom say the total out loud made it real, in a way it hadn't been before. I had never added it all up. I had just sent what I could each month, taken out loans when the costs got too high, and tried not to think about the weight of it all. People were openly staring at me now. Some looked sympathetic, others looked shocked. Furthermore, Mom continued, my youngest called me every single day for 5 years. Not once did they miss a call, unless I was too ill to talk. They researched my condition extensively and found the specialist who gave me additional years of good life. They coordinated my care from across the country with a dedication that most people couldn't manage even if they lived next door. And in my final month, they quit their job and came home to be with me around the clock. They slept on my couch, they held my hand through the worst of it. They were there when I died. Tears were streaming down my face now. I hadn't cried yet during the funeral, staying numb and frozen. But hearing Mom defend me, hearing her list everything I had done, broke something open inside me. Marcus had turned around fully in his seat now, staring at me with an expression I still couldn't interpret. "I have kept detailed records of everything," Mom said. "Bank statements, medical bills, phone logs, emails with my care providers. My lawyer has all of this documentation. It is irrefutable. I kept these records not because I doubted my youngest's motives, but because I knew a day might come when the truth would need to be proven. That day is today." The funeral director had returned to stand beside the screen, holding a large manila envelope. Mom's voice from the video said, "My will reflects the reality of who cared for me and how. I have left specific instructions about my estate, and those instructions are based on the truth of what each of my children contributed to my final years. Marcus will receive his share, but the majority of my estate, including my home and my savings, will go to my youngest. This is not a punishment. This is simply fair recognition of sacrifice and love." The screen went dark. The lights came back up slowly. The funeral director opened the manila envelope and began pulling out papers. "As executor of the will, I have been instructed to make these documents available for review immediately following this service," he said. "Bank records, medical payment receipts, phone logs, and testimonies from medical providers are all included. The deceased wanted there to be no doubt about the truth of these matters." The room exploded into conversation. People were talking over each other, some arguing, some comforting others. I sat frozen, unable to move or speak. This was so much more than I had expected. Mom hadn't just defended me. She had documented everything and made it the centerpiece of her funeral. She had forced everyone to confront the truth in the most public way possible. Marcus stood up abruptly. His face had gone from pale to red. He turned to face me, and for a moment I thought he might yell or lunge at me. But instead, his expression crumpled. The anger drained out of him, replaced by something that looked like devastation. "You! He started, his voice shaking. You sent money? All that time? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded. Why did you hide it? I found my voice, though it came out rough. Mom asked me to. She thought you wouldn't accept it. Or that you'd try to control it. Marcus looked like I had slapped him. You thought that little of me? He asked. I didn't answer. The truth was, yes. By the end, I had thought that little of him. His behavior had earned that judgment. His wife stood up and put her hand on his arm. Marcus, maybe we should step outside, she said quietly, but he shook his off. I need to know, he said, looking at me. Did you really call every day? I nodded again. Every single day for 5 years. Morning or night. Sometimes both. He closed his eyes. I didn't know. She never mentioned it. I thought you barely kept in touch. That's because you never asked Mom about me, I said, finding my strength now. You built this story in your head about who I was and what I was doing, and you never once checked if it was true. You were so convinced I was the bad guy that you didn't see what was actually happening. And Uncle stood up from the back. I think we all owe someone an apology, he said loudly. I believe the things I heard about you, he said, looking at me. I'm sorry. If I had known the truth, I would have said something. A few other people murmured agreement. One of Mom's friends from church came over to me and hugged me tightly. Your mother talked about you all the time, she whispered. She was so proud of you. I never believed you had abandoned her. Marcus was still standing there, looking lost. The funeral director cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a brief recess before continuing with the service, he suggested. This has been a lot of information to process. People started moving, some heading outside for air, others clustering in small groups to whisper and speculate. Marcus finally spoke again, his voice barely audible. I told you that you had no right to be here. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, an acknowledgement of what he had done. I'm sorry. I was so wrong. I've been wrong about everything. Tears were running down his face now. His wife looked uncomfortable, probably realizing that her husband's inheritance wasn't going to be what he had expected. Why? I asked him. Why did you want to believe the worst about me? We used to be close. What happened? Marcus wiped his face with his hand. I don't know. Maybe I was jealous that you got out, that you built a life somewhere else while I stayed stuck here. Maybe I needed to make you the villain so I could feel like the hero. Maybe I'm just a terrible person who hurt his own brother because it made me feel important. It was the most honest Marcus had been with me in years. Maybe ever. Mom didn't think you were terrible, I said quietly. She left you a share of the estate. She made sure of that. She just wanted the truth to be known. Marcus nodded miserably. I don't deserve anything, not after how I've treated you. People were starting to come back inside, ready to continue the service. The funeral director approached us. Are we ready to proceed? He asked gently. I looked at Marcus. Despite everything, he was still my brother, and Mom wouldn't want her funeral to be remembered only for this confrontation. We're ready, I said. The rest of the service proceeded more normally. Marcus gave a eulogy, though he struggled through it, his voice breaking multiple times. He talked about Mom's strength and her kindness. He didn't mention me. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I talked about Mom's love of flowers and books. I shared a memory of her teaching me to bake cookies when I was little. I thanked everyone for coming. I didn't address the elephant in the room. That had already been addressed thoroughly. At the cemetery, as they lowered Mom's casket into the ground, Marcus stood on one side of the grave and I stood on the other. We didn't speak, but when it was time to drop flowers onto the casket, a tradition Mom had wanted, Marcus walked around the grave to stand next to me. Can we talk? He asked. After this? I nodded. Yes. We need to. After everyone else had left the cemetery, after the funeral home workers had started filling in the grave, Marcus and I sat on a bench under a large oak tree. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Marcus said, "I need you to understand something. I genuinely believed you weren't there for Mom. She never told me about the money. She never mentioned your daily calls. When I asked her about you, she would say you were busy with work and your life. I thought that meant you didn't care. I thought I was the only one carrying the burden. I considered this. Why didn't you reach out to me yourself? Why didn't you call me and say, 'Hey, Mom needs more help. Can you contribute?'" Marcus looked down at his hands. "Pride, I guess. And anger. I resented you for leaving. I wanted you to fail at taking care of Mom from a distance. I wanted to be proven right that you can't really love someone when you're not physically present. But you were wrong," I said. Marcus nodded. "I was wrong. Love shows up in a lot of different ways. You showed up in all the ways I couldn't see, and I showed up in the one way that was visible. But your ways mattered more. They cost you more. They required more sacrifice." I shook my head. "It's not a competition. We both loved her. We both did what we could. The difference is you made me the enemy. You turned our family against me. You whispered that I had no right to be at my own mother's funeral." My voice rose with emotion. "That's what I can't get past, Marcus. Not the misunderstanding about money or phone calls. The cruelty, the intent to hurt me on the worst day of my life." Marcus's face contorted with regret. "I know. There's no excuse. I was so angry at you for showing up these last few weeks, for suddenly playing the devoted child after what I thought was years of absence. It felt like you were swooping in to look good at the end without having done any of the real work. I wanted to hurt you. I wanted you to feel as angry and bitter as I felt." He paused. "I'm sorry. Those words are nowhere near enough. But I'm sorry." We sat in silence for a while longer. A breeze rustled the leaves above us. In the distance, I could hear cars on the main road, life going on as normal, even though our world had shifted. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "With the estate? With us?" I had been thinking about that question since Mom's video ended. The estate will be settled according to Mom's wishes. I'm not going to contest the will. I don't want to. Mom knew what she was doing. Marcus nodded. "And us?" he pressed. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. I don't trust you right now. But you're still my brother, and Mom wouldn't want us to be permanently broken." Marcus looked hopeful for the first time. "So, there's a chance? For us to rebuild?" I thought about it. Maybe. Over time. But you need to understand, Marcus, that rebuilding trust takes years. It's not fixed by one apology at a cemetery. You spent years tearing me down to other people. You made me an outsider in my own family. That damage doesn't heal quickly. "I'll do whatever it takes," Marcus said quickly. "I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll apologize to every person I talk to about you. I'll make it right." I appreciated the sentiment, but I also knew that talk was easy. Action was what mattered. "We'll see," I said. "For now, let's just get through the next few days. There's still a lot to handle with Mom's affairs." Over the following weeks, the full extent of Mom's estate became clear. The house was worth more than I expected. She had saved more money than I knew about. Combined with a life insurance policy, the total value was significant. According to the will, Marcus received 20%. I received the remaining 80%, along with full ownership of the house and all of Mom's personal belongings. Marcus's wife was not happy about this arrangement. I heard through family members that she had been counting on a substantial inheritance, that they had debts and plans based on expectations that didn't pan out. She tried to convince Marcus to contest the will, but to his credit, he refused. "It's what Mom wanted," he told her, according to our aunt. And it's more than I deserve after how I treated my brother. The lawyer who handled Mom's estate met with me privately. He was the one Mom had worked with to document everything. Your mother was very clear about her intentions, he told me. She wanted you to be financially secure. She knew the sacrifices you made and the debt you took on. She saw this as repaying you and setting you up for a better future. He handed me a sealed envelope. She also left this letter for you. Private, just between you and her. I waited until I was alone in Mom's house to open the letter. It was several pages long, written in Mom's shaky handwriting from her final weeks. She told me how proud she was of me. She apologized for not standing up to Marcus sooner, for letting him build a false narrative about me. She explained that she kept my contributions secret from Marcus because she saw how jealous and resentful he had become, and she feared he would lash out at both of us if he knew the truth. I knew this revelation at my funeral would be hard, she wrote. I knew it might cause pain and conflict, but I also knew it was necessary. Marcus needed to face what he had done. The family needed to know the truth. And you, my darling child, needed to be vindicated. You needed people to see your heart and your sacrifice. I'm sorry I couldn't do this while I was alive. I was too tired and too sick to handle the fallout, but I could arrange for it to happen after. I hope you can forgive me for the drama of it all. It seemed like the only way to make sure the truth came out. I cried. Reading that letter, I cried for Mom, for the burden she had carried, for her regret about not handling things differently. I cried for myself, for the years of being misunderstood and excluded. And I cried for Marcus, who had been confronted with his failures in the most public and painful way possible. I decided to keep Mom's house. It needed work, but it was full of memories and history. I used some of the inheritance money to pay off all the loans I had taken out for Mom's care. The weight that lifted from my shoulders when those debts were cleared was indescribable. For the first time in 5 years, I could breathe without the constant anxiety of owing money I didn't have. Marcus reached out several times in those weeks. He asked if we could have dinner, if he could help me sort through Mom's things, if there was anything I needed. I kept him at arm's length, not ready to let him back in. But I also didn't completely shut him out. I responded to his messages. I agreed to meet for coffee once. A brief and awkward conversation where we mostly talked about the weather and avoided the big issues. One afternoon, about 2 months after the funeral, I was at Mom's house cleaning out her attic when I found boxes of old photos. I spent hours going through them, transported back to childhood. There were pictures of Marcus and me as kids, grinning gap-toothed smiles, arms around each other. There were photos of family vacations, birthday parties, school events, evidence of a time when things were simpler, when we were a team. I called Marcus on impulse. I'm at Mom's house going through old photos, I said when he answered. Do you want to come see them? There was a pause. Then, really? You want me to come over? I surprised myself by saying, yes. I think Mom would want us to remember the good times, not just the bad. Marcus arrived 30 minutes later. We spread the photos out on the living room floor and went through them one by one. We laughed at our terrible haircuts and questionable fashion choices. We remembered stories we had forgotten. We cried over photos of Mom when she was young and healthy and full of life. It wasn't a complete healing, but it was a start. I've been going to therapy, Marcus said at one point, trying to figure out why I became the person who could say such cruel things to his own brother. My therapist thinks I have a lot of unresolved stuff from when Dad left. Abandonment issues that made me hypersensitive to you leaving for college. I turned you into Dad in my mind, I guess. The person who chose something else over family. I appreciated that he was doing the work to understand himself. I'm glad you're in therapy, I said. I think it could help. Marcus looked at me. Are you? In therapy, I mean. I nodded. Yeah. Started a few weeks ago. Grief counseling mostly, but also dealing with family stuff. We kept looking at photos. Marcus picked up one of Mom from just a few years ago at his daughter's birthday party. I thought I was doing enough, he said quietly. I really did. I visited. I helped with errands and appointments. I thought that was what she needed from me. He looked at me. I didn't understand that what she really needed was for me to be honest, to ask for help instead of pretending I had it all under control, to see you as a partner in caring for her, not a rival. She needed both of us, I said. In different ways. There's no shame in that. Marcus set the photo down carefully. Do you think you'll ever really forgive me? Or am I always going to be the brother who said you had no right to be at your own mother's funeral? It was a fair question, an important one. I thought about it seriously before answering. I don't know if I'll ever forget what you said, or forget the years of feeling shut out and misunderstood. But forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the hurt define everything going forward. I think I can get there eventually, but you have to understand it's a process. You can't rush it. Marcus nodded. I understand. And I'll wait, however long it takes. We packed up the photos carefully, deciding to split them between us so we each had copies of the family memories. As Marcus was leaving, he turned back at the door. Thank you, he said, for giving me a chance. I don't deserve it, but thank you. In the months that followed, Marcus and I slowly rebuilt something that resembled a relationship. We met for lunch every few weeks. We texted occasionally, simple things like news articles Mom would have liked or memories that came up. He made good on his promise to correct the narrative with family members. I heard from several relatives that Marcus had reached out to apologize for the things he had said about me, to set the record straight. His marriage didn't survive the aftermath of the funeral. His wife filed for divorce about 6 months later, reportedly upset about the lost inheritance and resentful of the time Marcus was spending trying to repair his relationship with me. Marcus seemed sad about the divorce, but not devastated. We weren't as solid as I thought, he admitted to me. Turns out a lot of things in my life weren't as solid as I thought. I eventually sold Mom's house. It was too full of memories, both good and painful, for me to live there permanently. I used the money to move to a new city, start fresh, and invest in a future that felt like mine. I also set up a scholarship fund in Mom's name for students pursuing healthcare careers. It seemed like a fitting tribute to someone who had received so much care in her final years. The last time I visited Mom's grave before moving, Marcus came with me. We stood there together, and for the first time since the funeral, it felt like we were on the same side. I think she'd be happy we're trying, Marcus said, gesturing between us. I nodded. Yeah, I think she would. Marcus had brought flowers, Mom's favorites. As he placed them on the grave, he said, I'm sorry, Mom, for not seeing clearly, for not being better. I added my own flowers and my own words. Thanks for everything, for believing in me even when others didn't, for making sure the truth came out. We stood in silence for a while. Then Marcus asked, Do you think she forgives me? For how I acted, I considered the question. I think she already forgave you before she died. She loved you, Marcus. That's why she left you part of the estate. She could have cut you out completely if she wanted revenge, but that wasn't her goal. Her goal was truth and fairness, not punishment. Marcus seemed to take comfort in that. As we walked back to our cars, he said, I know you're moving away, but can we stay in touch? Real touch, not just empty promises? I agreed. Yeah, we can do that. The story of what happened at Mom's funeral spread beyond our immediate family. It became one of those tales that people told at gatherings, a cautionary story about assumptions and hidden truths. Some people thought Mom was brilliant for orchestrating the revelation the way she did. Others thought it was unnecessarily dramatic and hurtful. I understood both perspectives. What I knew for certain was that Mom's video changed everything. It changed how people saw me. It changed how Marcus saw himself. It changed the trajectory of our family dynamics. In those few minutes of recorded truth, Mom had accomplished what years of conversation might never have achieved. She had forced everyone to confront reality instead of comfortable lies. Did I wish things had happened differently? Sometimes. I wished Marcus and I had communicated better from the start. I wished Mom had felt able to set the record straight while she was alive. I wished our family hadn't needed such a dramatic intervention to see the truth. But I also recognize that people are complicated. Families are messy. Sometimes the only way through the mess is a moment of undeniable clarity, even if that moment is painful. The words Marcus whispered at the funeral, "You have no right to be here," stopped haunting me eventually. They became part of the story, but not the defining part. The defining part was what came after: the truth, the documentation, the irrefutable evidence of love and sacrifice, Mom's voice from beyond the grave saying, "This is what really happened. This is who really showed up." In the end, I did have every right to be there. I had earned that right through 5 years of daily phone calls, through mountains of debt taken on without complaint, through sleepless nights and endless advocacy. I had earned it through love that didn't need an audience or recognition. And thanks to Mom's careful planning, everyone finally knew it. Marcus's regret was real. His journey to understand and change himself was ongoing. Our relationship would never be what it was when we were kids, but it had become something new, something built on honesty instead of assumptions, something fragile but growing stronger. As I settled into my new city and my new life, I often thought about that day at the funeral, the shock of Marcus's words, the numbness that followed, the moment the lights dimmed and Mom's face appeared on that screen, the gasps and whispers as truth spilled into the room, the look on Marcus's face as he realized how wrong he had been. It was the worst day of my life in many ways. Burying Mom, facing Marcus's cruelty, having my private sacrifices exposed to public scrutiny. But it was also a turning point. The day when hiding and secret keeping ended. The day when I stopped being the invisible child. The one whose contributions didn't count because they couldn't be seen. I learned that truth has power, that documentation matters, that sometimes love means setting the record straight, even when it causes discomfort. I learned that regret can be a catalyst for change, but only if the person feeling it is willing to do the hard work of transformation. I learned that forgiveness is possible, but it requires time, effort, and genuine remorse. Mom's final gift to me wasn't just the inheritance, though that changed my life in practical ways. Her final gift was vindication, the knowledge that she had seen everything I did, valued it, and made sure others would see it too. She had witnessed my love and sacrifice, and she had refused to let it remain invisible. For someone who had felt unseen and unappreciated for so long, that was everything. So when people ask me about my brother whispering that I had no right to be at Mom's funeral, I tell them the whole story. I tell them about his immediate regret, about the video that changed everything, about the long, difficult process of truth and reconciliation that followed. I tell them that what happened next wasn't just one moment, but a series of moments that reshaped my family and my understanding of love, sacrifice, and justice. And I tell them that sometimes the hardest things we go through become the foundations for something better. Not perfect, but better. More honest, more real. That's what Mom wanted for us. And in her own dramatic, carefully planned way, she made it happen. What would you have done? Let me know in the comments below.